We turn now to the TPP and the cost of New Zealand's pursuit of the agreement as Donald Trump looks to rework his refugee ban, all the while denying it is a refugee ban, as he attempts to plug leaks and conducts a Twitter invective against CNN and the New York Times. Amongst the campaign promises he's actually managed to implement is pulling the US out of the TPP. And with the US gone, the agreement's appeal to other large signatories like Japan in particular is radically diminished. So on the surface, that's 5 years of negotiations down the drain, although we'll soon hear from Todd McClay, who'll tell us doors do remain open. And while the total cost of negotiating the deal may never be known, documents obtained by Checkpoint under the Official Information Act reveal travel costs for one ministry alone were more than $4 million. Here's Zac Fleming with the details.
Between 2010 and 2015, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade spent more than $4 million sending its staff to negotiate the 12-country Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal. Nearly $900,000 on accommodation, nearly $2.5 million on flights, and nearly $800,000 on other costs like meals and taxis. And that's not including the travel costs of the Trade and Foreign Affairs ministers themselves, and not including wage or salary costs. Auckland University law professor and long-time opponent of the TPP, Jane Kelsey, says the government needs to release the total, given the deal was scrapped by new US President Donald Trump in just his third day in office.
I think the sum that we've got there is a drop in the bucket compared to what the actual costs have been. You've got a whole range of ministries that were involved, and you have massive numbers of people who are engaged over the 5 years.
Ms. Kelsey says equally as important are other costs that can never be calculated.
In addition to the actual expenditure and the staff time, there are the opportunity costs of what not just the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, but many other ministries could have been doing with those resources in addressing the kinds of real problems that we face rather than chasing after this holy grail.
MFAT estimated the TPP would have added more than $2 billion a year to New Zealand's GDP by 2030. But opponents had concerns including sovereignty, the environment, copyright, and the influence of overseas business. New Zealand and Australia have committed to trying to salvage the TPP in some form, despite Japan saying they are not interested without the US involved. For Checkpoint, Zac Fleming.
So one ministry, $4 million, and Checkpoint believes that is a small fraction of the total cost. But as a trading nation with a government committed to the TPP and any meaningful substitute or replacement agreements that might be on offer, Trade Minister Todd McClay thinks the $4 million we've identified from the one ministry was money well spent.
My view is that if New Zealand's not out arguing for better rights and fairer access for New Zealand exporters overseas and making the case on our behalf, then, John, nobody will. It was a very long negotiation and it does take a lot of people. But I guess if you look at when the China agreement was negotiated, that effort, that resource and taxpayer money was well spent because of our exports to China now. And in as far as TPP is concerned, whilst it's clear the deal is finished and as far as America is concerned, there are many other countries that have been saying to me over the last few weeks it is still worth looking to see what the next steps might be and how can we take TPP forward, if at all we can.
OK, there's about 3 follow-up points and I want to pick on them all. So let's go to the cost. Of course, that's just MFAT's cost. That does include you, Tim Grosser, the parties who travel with you. What do you think the overall spend on the non-TPP agreement was?
Yeah, look, I'm not sure. I'd have to go and get some advice on that. Again, I've only been minister for the last year. But without question, we do spend money overseas on New Zealand's place and New Zealand's presence. And again, given the importance of trade and exports to every part of our economy, every part of our country, we have to be out there putting our best foot forward and opening up doors and negotiating agreements. So without question, every year we ask the Treasury and the Minister of Finance for funds to be able to do that, to run the network, and we're going to have to keep doing that because nobody owes New Zealand a living.
Are you having conversations with people behind closed doors, and if they're behind closed doors you're unlikely to open those doors on Checkpoint, in which everyone is just saying, actually we've just got to see Donald Trump out and this agreement will be back? Are those conversations taking place? Because I've been told they are.
Yeah, so it's not behind closed doors. I've been pretty open about the countries I'm visiting and that I'm having conversations. Now, the detail of what we're talking about probably doesn't work at this stage, broadcast over the radio, but I visited four of the key components of TPP, at least to New Zealand over the last couple of weeks: Japan, Australia, Singapore, Mexico last week. I've spoken to all of the other TPP countries except Brunei, who I will speak to before the end of this week. And we're doing this because New Zealand is the depository of the agreement. So we're sort of the guys that started it, and we hold the pen, I suppose. I'm also doing it because I'm interested in their views and positions so that the New Zealand government can finally take a position. But all of the countries have said they do believe a common set of rules that business can rely upon across the Asia-Pacific is important. They do believe that the TPP agreement is important and is a significant achievement. And so we're going to meet all of the ministers in Chile next month, where we will have a conversation and decide what the next steps forward might be. And so I think it's far too soon to say TPP is over, although I'm not sure what can be salvaged.
Sorry, can I come in there? So you said all the ministers, obviously all the ministers minus America, right?
That's right. So America is very clear that they're not involved in it.
And Japan is saying, show me the American money and you've got a deal. So without Japan, where do you stand?
Well, no, Japan is saying publicly, and also in my conversation with them, that countries should continue to ratify TPP. I mean, we've done our legislation last year. Japan has ratified. They're saying they still see the agreement as important. They want America in it. But they, as with New Zealand and other countries, are going to have to do some of the modelling to see what the value is of the agreement without the US. I think it's clear that the US won't take part in the foreseeable future.
For the time being, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how long did it take to negotiate the TPP from the very beginnings, the little acorn of that idea?
It's probably a good 8 years. I think.
So if you've got to see out 4 years of Donald Trump, I mean, do you see the point I'm making?
Yeah. Well, look, I don't think it's a matter of seeing out the current US administration. The PM's asked me to get up there when my equivalent is confirmed in place to start a conversation with them, because the world has to continue to trade with the US. But in the meantime, I guess there's a couple of questions that need to be answered, including, is it, do you sit back and wait for a change in any one part of the world? And my experience over the last year of trade minister is, trade doesn't stay still. People put in place protection, they take protection down. Where some doors appear, closed, less open than before, others will open up.
Right, what doors are opening? What doors are opening?
Yeah, certainly when I was in Mexico last week, they are very clear that they think there are three options we need to talk about. The first is what next steps there could be for TPP without a conclusion to knowing what they could be just yet. Secondly, what involvement could New Zealand and other countries play in the Pacific Alliance? And thirdly, what consideration should we give to a bilateral deal with Mexico? And I'm hearing that from many of the other countries as well. So I suspect that what will happen, as there remains uncertainty around the role the US will play when it comes to trade, other opportunities will come up, because countries who previously perhaps were more secure in that trading environment now realize that there is not the same certainty and they need to diversify their trading interests. So I think New Zealand's pretty well placed to take advantage of that. But I would caution, it's been 4 weeks since the new administration, and that's a very short period of time in trade circles.
Todd McClay, the Trade Minister, one of the big issues that people who were objecting to the TPP in New Zealand had was the sovereignty issue and the potential loss of it and the power of Big Pharma and all those kinds of things. Is that mitigated with the US being absent from the agreement? Does it make you feel less concerned about the TPP? If you were concerned about it, we'd love your feedback on that, 2101, or email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz.